Who is the first time today? Who came first time today? Thank you, sister. Thank you, brother. So most of us, we know the amenities are right in the back, and we got a two exit. One exit here, one in the back, but we got on the side exit also. We would have a topic today. We have a keys to stopping dementia, and where do you get your protein? After first talk, we would have a 10-15 minutes break. There we would have a finger food, then we will come back again, and then we will listen the second one. Before we start, please bow with me. Our Father in heaven, gracious and merciful God, thank you, Lord, for giving us the opportunity. We can come together and listen to the program which is on the health. But your word tell us again and again about the health, how important is the temple of the Holy Spirit, Lord. Please speak through Dr. Eddie and help us, Lord, so we put into practice whatever we listening today. We love you, Lord. Want to pray for those who are on their way also, Lord. Give them travel mercy also. We ask in Jesus' holy name. Amen.
Right there, better. So today we have a super important topic, the topic of dementia prevention. And did you know that Australia is among the top countries in the world that happens to suffer from cases of dementia? So I'm very happy you guys are here tonight because you are going to be learning what you need to be doing to avoid being one of those statistics. And there is a lot we can do for dementia. Dementia is not something that will happen just because. What I'm going to be sharing with you is like Isaac Newton said, the reason why I'm able to see way there is because I'm standing in the shoulders of giants. And those giants are major universities that are coming up with some fascinating research. And this research is telling us that there is actually quite a lot of hope. This is an artist. He was painting his face as an artist, and he showed us the progression of how the disease started becoming worse and worse and worse and worse. So look at this. This is very sad thing. So this is the first one, that he painted of himself. Then as the disease started to advance, he started losing, his accuracy on his painting. Then became like that. Then like that, you start losing the form. Then like that, no longer a face. And that is the reality of this horrible disease until he ended up like this. So the reality is that you can be physically strong, but if your mind is gone, what happens? Game over. It's game over. And sadly, that is what happens to many people here in Australia. If you don't believe me, go to one of those nursing homes, There you will see many of those cases of people with dementia. So our understanding of how we deal with disease is changing. See, in the old days, we used to have a very linear paradigm. You have, a diagnosis, then you apply some sort of treatment, and then you expect to have some sort of response. Things are not as simple as that. We are humans that are complex. In fact, just in this room, there's so many different nationalities of origin, yes or no? All of us, with our different points of views and cultures and foods and so forth. And that's where the concept of personalized medicine comes about. Since we are not the same, you should customize things according to the needs of the culture. And that's the way that we did that study that we were talking about yesterday. Excuse me. The study on depression. Remember, we went through, we have mentioned this a little bit of how there are 10 root causes for disease and how when 4 or more combine. Later in the week, we're going to go with much more detail about it. But what I want you to see is that you can end up with depression through many different roads. For some, maybe medical, nutritional, addictions. For other ones, maybe developmental, lifestyle, social. There's many different roads that can take you to the problem of depression and anxiety. In the same way, Alzheimer's and dementia, there are many ways you can get there. In fact, if you want to get dementia, just do this, Make sure that you eat plenty of meat and lots of sugar. Make sure you don't sleep enough. Make sure you don't do any exercise whatsoever. Make sure your hormones are all over the place. Make sure your vitamin D is nice and low. And I can assure you, you're going to end up with what is called a type 2 Alzheimer's disease. So, as you can see, in the list to get the Alzheimer's, we didn't mention luck. Okay? That is not part of the equation there, Rather, there are things that we can literally do something about it. Statistics from Australia tell us that 1 in 20 people over the age of 60 are going to end up with a diagnosis of dementia. 1 in 5 of people above 80 will end up with a diagnosis of dementia. And dementia is an expensive disease. See, the patient with diabetes, I can see that patient every month, every 3 weeks or so, and he's fine at home, taking care of himself. Can you do that with somebody with advanced dementia? Can you leave him there at home? No, isn't it? They go out and start getting lost and walk in the middle of the road and so forth. You have to pay, for somebody to be taking care of that. Oh, doctor, but here we have, insurance for everybody and and so forth. Still, somebody pays for that, And those are your taxes, the ones that pay for that. So the more the number of people with dementia, the more the cost for everybody to pay. So everybody loses because of that. In fact, we are estimating that due to public health interventions in the near future, we are going to see a few decreases on cancers, stroke, heart disease. But look what we are expecting regarding dementia. Things are going to get worse. Again, I'm very happy you guys are here because you are understanding this information and you can avoid being part of this statistic. In fact, we expect by 2050 to grow from a current 35 million people with dementia to 115 million people with dementia. And here you can see the areas of the world that have the red are the areas that are high amounts of dementia cases. How is Australia looking here? You know, there's some things that Australia is number one, and you guys should be very proud about it. This is not one of them, you know. You should not be proud to be in the top numbers of dementia worldwide. So you can see here, you know, here's the list of the countries around the world that happen to have the most dementia cases. So I'm going to be using the term dementia and Alzheimer's interchangeable. Dementia is what is called an umbrella. There's many different types of dementia. But it happens to be that the most common dementia is which one? Alzheimer's dementia. So that's most of the diagnoses are going to be for Alzheimer's dementia. As you can see, the second most common one is going to be the vascular, then the Lewy bodies, and the frontotemporal. And there's even further more subtypes that happen to be more rare. So 5 warning signs of dementia. Sign number 1, memory loss that affects your ability to function every day. You go out at home and you get lost. You don't know how to get back home, you know. 2, difficulty performing familiar tasks. You're cooking your favorite recipe and you don't know what to do, you know. That's not normal. You know, you've done that so many times, it should become like second nature. Problems with language. You're speaking and you cannot find the word or the words. You know, you get stuck. How do you say? How do you say? How do you say? It's okay to forget once in a while, you know, but not on a regular basis. Disorientation in time and space. People have lived 30, 40 years in the same community, they have a hard time finding to their home. That's not normal, you know. And impair judgment, your ability to take, you know, financial decisions and so forth. You have always, you know, been disciplined with your finances and so forth. Now suddenly the bills are not being getting paid on time, and now the bank is charging you for something because you didn't, you know, send the right things and so forth. Beware of that. If any of those things are happening, we need to check further to make sure everything is okay. Now, a very common question that I get asked is, Doctor, what is the difference between normal aging and dementia? That's a pretty good question, isn't it? So it's okay to start forgetting a few things as you're getting older. Things that you don't usually do, things that you don't usually interact with. You may have gone, you know, some Pacific island and tasted some exotic fruit there that you really liked. And then 30 years later, I ask you, what's the name of that fruit you ate there in the islands? You're like, man, I really don't remember. Of course you're not going to remember. You don't say these things every day. But if you start forgetting apple and banana and pear, I start getting worried. You know, these things you shouldn't be forgetting because you're interacting with these things all the time. Also, there's a reflection of your lifestyle. The older you get, you start getting slower. But something that doesn't vary, and the worse your lifestyle, the more you're going to slow down. But there is something that shouldn't vary, and that is your intelligence. In other words, if you, when you were young, you were very smart and bright, have good news. As you get older, you will continue being very smart and bright. But I have some bad news. If you were not very smart when you were young, something will continue later on, even though you can still challenge your brain, and try to improve things. So intelligence should remain the same. Slowness, that's kind of something natural, in quotation marks, but you shouldn't vary that much. And notice what happens to the brain of somebody with Alzheimer's disease. The pathologists, the people that see these things in the microscope, describe this thing as a tree that is losing its leaves. Okay? That is how that brain looks like. And dementia is when things slow down, but also there's changes in personality and behavior. The person used to be like talkative and laugh, making everybody laugh and so forth. Now he's quiet and doesn't want to see anybody and so forth. That's not normal, That is just not normal. When you have that type of changes, behavior, your routines and things that you used to have, there's suddenly everything completely different as in the past. That's also not normal. And the diagnosis of dementia is made by a specialized test that we measure different things. We want to check your memory, what's your ability to recall and to be able to remember things. Two, we're going to check how is your ability with language to remember the words and so forth. We can even test your mechanical abilities. You saw in the drawing I showed you at the beginning how that artist started losing his motor abilities. Recognition, there's people that forget their loved ones. They cannot recognize them and so forth. And finally, the frontal lobes of the brain. And if we don't stop this process, this is the good news that even at the very, very beginning stages, we can still do something about it. But if we don't do anything, the thing will continue to go worse and worse and worse, and you get to the sad part of the disease. So the disease is going to go through 3 stages. First, you have the mild type of Alzheimer's disease. You start forgetting the names, the addresses. You go to the store. You don't remember why you went to the store and so forth. And if you don't stop this here, this is going to go into a moderate. And here is when you start seeing, very negative type of effects, such as forgetting your family, forgetting your loved ones. And also very much the inhibition starts to go away. You don't know why it's not okay to come down for breakfast without your pants, The ability to evaluate these type of things. And then it goes to the very sad stage of the disease, the severe type of the disease, in which you even forget how to speak. You are completely lost. You don't know what's going on whatsoever. Now, if you bring me a patient with severe type of dementia, I'm going to tell you, I'm sorry, there's nothing I can do for this person. But who I want to see, it's actually the children of this man. That's the one I want to talk to, okay? Because those can make changes and avoid ending up where this person ended up. So as I tell my patients, this is just like a boat. So the boat, how good the material of your boat is and so forth, that has to do a lot with your genetics and how you grew up, how much exercise and your diet and so forth. Now, how are you living your life will determine if that boat will continue to float for a long time, or if you're going to start weakening the material of your boat and you're going to start getting in trouble. So that's why in your 20s, in your 30s, in your 40s, what's your diet? How much stress are you under? Are you sleeping enough? Are you letting your weight to go out of control? Are you end up with diabetes? Are you having problems with blood pressure? All these factors are weakening your boat. So, by the time the 50s arrive, now we're starting to see cracks in the material of the boat. And now some water starts to seep in. And even then, we can still do something about it. Remember inflammation on Sunday? No? You can deal with the inflammation. You can deal with vascular atherosclerosis. Remember, we're talking about how the artery is clogged up, and we can do something about it and so forth. Because if you don't, by the time the 60s arrive, man, the water is just coming in on that boat. And even if you're trying to get the water out of it, it may be too late, and you're going to end up with a sinking of that boat shorter than what it should have happened, and so forth. Now, there's a gene for Alzheimer's, the famous APOE4. So this gene for Alzheimer's, guess what this gene is about? Inflammation. This is a gene of inflammation. People with this gene respond, simple mistakes, their body responds tremendously with inflammation in their bodies. Okay, that's what this is. And you can have the double whammy that you have, a copy from your father and a copy from your mother. But you can still do something about it. If you have this gene, that doesn't mean you're going to have Alzheimer's disease. It means you're closer to the precipice. What should you do? Move as back as possible, because you're very high risk to fall there. Here's a statistic of what are the odds that you are going to carry this inflammation gene depending on your background. So if you are European, 26%. If you have African blood, 34%. Jewish, 21%. East Asian, 17%. Hispanic Latino, 22%. South Asian, 17%. I did the test myself. Thank God I don't have this gene of inflammation. And here you can see the factors that are related to developing dementia at a young age. Notice that factor number one is blood pressure that is making you dizzy and so forth. That lack of blood to the brain is a very important factor to develop that. Depression, alcohol, stroke, and then you can see the factor there of that gene. This chart is in my Twitter. If you want to go and get it, you will find it there. But as you can see, there's factors that have a bigger impact than that gene, okay? Even alcohol. You can see the big difference that alcohol has on your risk for dementia. So, as I told you, this APOE4 doesn't mean you're going to end up with dementia. This is a study from the from the Lancet, and here you can see it's only 7% factor, the Alzheimer's gene. There's other things that have a bigger impact. Less education. What can you do if you have less education? What can you do? There's a college there, you can sign up. It's never too late, It is never too late. Also, hearing loss. This is a big deal. You know what's hearing loss related to? Atherosclerosis. The arteries that go to the ear, that's number one cause of it. There's many other factors, but the number one cause, the arteries that go to the ear start to get clogged with atherosclerosis, and you lose your hearing. So that's a reflection of what's happening to the vascular system all over your body. Hypertension, obesity, smoking, depression, physical inactivity, social isolation, diabetes. If you notice, most of those things, we can do something about it, okay? And as I mentioned to you, when you check this list of factors, you can do something about it. Notice that the factors that decrease the risk are hand grip strength. Somebody was grading me there with very nice hand grip. That's good. That's a very good thing. How do you get strong hand grip? Exercise, that's right. There's no other way. There's no pill that I can tell, oh, just take that pill, take that supplement and you're going to get stronger. It doesn't work like that. You need to use your muscles. And then the second one, formal education. As I'm telling you, you need to read. You need to challenge your mind. This is something we can do. Even if you can barely read, well, challenge yourself to read much more. And that's going to be good. We live in a society that we like to watch videos and so forth, but we don't like to read, and that's not good. So challenge your mind, things that you're not familiar and so forth, that's good for you. So as we were mentioning in the other lecture yesterday, how some people that have the same age, some of them, their arteries look like this, and some, their arteries look healthy. What made the difference? The lifestyle, the way that we're living, what determined in which direction their arteries was going to end up. The same story happens with the bones, especially more markedly on females. See, there's some cells that in your bones that actually destroy bones. At the same time, there are cells in your bones that actually build up bone. So the question is, what is going to determine if you're going to have strong bones or weak bones? What's going to be that? Lifestyle, the way you live, will determine which of these two directions you are going to go. In the same way is in your brain. See, in your brain, you have mechanisms to build connections in your brain. At the same time, you have mechanisms to break down connections in your brain. So the question is, what's going to determine how much reserve you're going to have? Are you going to be stimulating the breaking down of the connections of your brain throughout your life, or are you stimulating the buildup of connections? That's what's going to determine that. And this is something that has been studied very well. You know what makes a difference between stimulating the destruction or building up the reserve at the brain? Something by the name of inflammation. That's what determines if you're going to be destroying those nerve cells. So, as we were learning, for those that didn't come there, we mentioned that animal product consumption. And you may say, well, doctor, the other day I went to McDonald's and I ate a hamburger and I didn't forget anything. Well, the reason why you didn't forget anything is because you have billions of those connections in your brain. But keep doing it on a regular basis, and what's going to happen? You're going to destroy so many of those connections, you are going to get yourself in really big trouble. So, How to arrive at Alzheimer's disease? There are multiple roads to arrive at Alzheimer's disease. Let's go quickly through each one of them. Number one, inflammatory or infectious. How do you get there? Via inflammation, okay? So it could be from your nose. From your nose, the germs go up your brain and start to cause inflammation. Or it could be due to the errors in your lifestyle and you're doing things that are inflammatory. Remember some of them? Smoking, use of any form of alcohol, use of caffeine, use of animal products, not sleeping enough, sugar, eating the trans fats, the cholesterol, and so forth. All those things, cause inflammation. You can trigger that type of Alzheimer's pathway to arrive to Alzheimer's. Or atrophic, especially males in Australia are vulnerable to this due to the fact that they don't do weights and exercise and so forth. If you don't do that, your testosterone levels start to decrease. And then you can get yourself in really big trouble. Let me show you this one. Where is this one here? Let me show you. So you can see it in a graphical way, things that decrease your testosterone. Here it is. Right in here. So you can see metabolic problems, diabetes, hypertension, excess body weight, cholesterol, having problems with your weight, not doing exercise, casual sex, too much pesticides, any form of animal product, alcohol, too much stress, not eating enough fruits and vegetables, mercury, BPAs from plastics, not being part of something like a church or some social connection on a regular basis, being lonely, junk food, not sleeping enough, exhaust, not enough vitamin D, pornography, too much chemicals and exposure to industrial things, cigarette smoking. So as you can see, these are things we can do something about it, yes or no? See, it's not like we're victims, that I'm destined to be like that and so forth. So we can do something about it. And you find this in my Twitter, by the way, also, for those people that may be interested. And then, so that's the atrophic. You don't have, good hormones and so forth. I've seen people that have problems with their thyroid, and they don't want to treat it. They don't want to take the medication. Don't do that. You are a very high increased risk of dementia if you have thyroid problems and you're not taking your thyroid medication. 1.5, glycotoxic. This one has to do with having diabetes and not treating the diabetes correctly or not caring about it. Ooh, that puts you at very high risk for dementia. You need to be disciplined. In fact, you need to start making those lifestyle changes to try to reverse that type 2 diabetes ASAP. 3, exposure to toxins. We'll come back to that in a minute. 4, and there's 2 4s because both of them, it's the same cause. Vascular, the arteries that go to your brain are clogging in, so you're not getting enough blood flow to your brain. And that's not good because your brain cells are very hungry for oxygen, for nutrients, and so forth. So if you clog those arteries that go to the brain, these cells starve and start dying, and that's why, you get that shrinking of the brain and so forth. Or traumatic, you have a significant fall And when that happens, the brain bounces inside your head and you break blood vessels. So the lack of those blood vessels can cause that problem. Now, if you think we can solve this with medication, I have bad news for you. We're not going to solve this with medication. Let me show you a clinical case. Patient that had family that had already dementia. Patient is reading. By the time she finishes reading the page, she forgets what she was reading about. That's not normal. She has lived for many years in the same place. Now she's getting lost. She cannot arrive at home. She gets lost going home. She has to depend on the GPS all the time and so forth. So what she did, she identified the causes of her dementia. We'll go quickly through those factors in a minute. And then she noticed her memory started improving. She's working as an executive secretary, so she's able to keep up, with all these things that needs to be, the appointments and so forth that happen. But then she gets a viral infection and she gets off the program. Starts eating again the animal products and the refined products and so forth. Not doing exercise, start using alcohol again and so forth. Her memory problems started to come back. She got scared, so she went back to the right lifestyle. And 3 years later, by the time they published the clinical case, she's working full-time, doesn't have a single symptom for dementia. So can you see here the situation? The choices we are taking are either taking us closer to dementia or helping us go away from it. So there are multiple risk factors for dementia. Here are just a few. These are not all of them. Physical inactivity, smoking, alcohol usage, air pollution, not enough social connection, not part of a church or some social connection, obesity, and then head injury, less education, hypertension, diabetes, depression, and hearing problems. So as you can see, we can do many changes there to decrease that. So this is the way that I like to explain it to my patients. Dementia is like a roof that has 38 holes, 38 potential holes. If you have a roof that has, 20 holes, but you just focus at closing one of the holes, do you think you're going to stop the flood the next time it rains very much? No, it's not going to work. And this is what I see. For example, because I'm such a frequent flyer and so forth, many times I get upgraded there, to the business class and so forth in planes and so forth. And the other day I was flying there, and I started observing the guy next to me. I think he was worried about dementia because he was doing all this Sudoku and stuff like that, crosswords and so forth, which I'm not against those things. Go for it, Go and challenge your mind. But notice what he did. When the beverage cart comes to serve the drink before the meal, what's his choice? Wine. That's the wrong thing to have if you want to avoid dementia. As I mentioned to you, alcohol is tremendously inflammatory. You are hurting big time your brain by taking alcohol. And then the food cart comes and they're asking, what's going to be the food choice. What's his choice? Chicken. That's the wrong thing to eat if you want to avoid dementia. Chicken is very inflammatory food. It's very high in cholesterol. It damages your arteries and so forth. If your goal is to avoid dementia, that's the wrong food to be eating. Then as the flight continues, we're in business class. You press a button and the seat actually becomes a bed and stuff like that. It's super nice. So I go to bed, and then I wake up in the middle of the night to go to the bathroom. There's this person there just wasting his hours just watching movies and so forth the whole night. I mean, that's the wrong thing to do. You should be trying to, catch up with your sleep and so forth to decrease your risk. So can you see the problem here? Here he is obsessed about this particular hole, which is good, go ahead and close that hole. But what about the rest of the holes? You need to do a comprehensive change, and you need to close as many of those holes as possible. So that's going to be the name of the game. Identify as many of those factors. And as you can see, it's not just one cause, but it's the complex combination of many of these factors. So let's go quickly through those factors. Factor number one, you're going to need a whole food, plant-based diet. And then I get patients that come to me and try to negotiate. Doctor, what about if I follow this, 6 times a day and one don't? Look, the more you follow this, the better your outcome will be. The research is very clear about this, how if you go away from this, you start introducing inflammation, you start stimulating the wrong type of things, and so forth. So you need a whole food, plant-based diet. You saw what happened to this patient. I told you the story, isn't it? This patient had diabetes, this patient had obesity, this patient had hypertension, and after a year and a half on that whole food, plant-based diet and the different lifestyle changes, he is no longer diabetic, he is no longer hypertensive, and now he has his normal weight. Good news or bad news? Good news, isn't it? That's exactly what we want to see. And the research is very clear. Eating those leafy green vegetables improve your memory. We know that cholesterol is directly related to Alzheimer's disease. So the higher your cholesterol, the higher your risk for Alzheimer's disease. That's why we need to decrease that cholesterol as soon as possible. And we know that healthy eating decreases your risk of cognitive decline. But the wrong eating habits can hurt your brain, not just your waistline. That's the problem with the wrong eating habits. And beware, islanders, coconut oil is not the best thing for you. Coconut is fantastic. Eat the coconut. The way that God made it like that, in fact, bring me some. I love coconut. But oil, that is not the best thing for you. This is a saturated oil. It actually raises your cholesterol, so it is not the best thing for you. If once in a while you do like some sweet treat or something with that coconut oil, that's okay, But to substitute it and use it on a regular basis, that's not good. See, your ancestors in the islands, what they did, they grinded the coconut and so forth, and that's how they were getting this oil. The coconut oil of today is a highly processed oil. It went through a machine, it separated all the nutrients, it took away all the fiber, and then you concentrated this very highly caloric food, which is not the best thing for you. What other thing you can do, especially if you are, very worried about Alzheimer's and so forth, or if you have family that have had, you better do this. Switch to a 2 meals a day only, okay? I've been following this method since 1997, and I love it, I eat when I am hungry. So, especially your last meal between supper and breakfast, try to shoot for 12 hours. And that process of that fasting helps you very much. Look at this published paper, intermittent fasting, which is what that is, enhances the ability of nerve cells to repair the DNA. You think that's important? Yes, because if you don't repair that DNA, boom, your cell dies. So by switching to that 2 meals a day program, you decrease very much that. You need to be shooting for at least 7 hours of sleep a night, okay? So watch out for that one. And this is very well documented. People with less sleep, they have higher risk for the dementia. Look at this one. You can find it on my Twitter. Finish your sleep, else your brain begins to eat itself. There's a self-cannibalism that takes place if you are not sleeping enough. And this other one, regularly getting less than 6 hours of sleep a night could cause the same long-term damage as alcohol abuse. That's how bad it is to not sleep enough on a regular basis. Make sure that you are doing enough physical exercise. This morning I went to record, at Korambung, and we had to leave very early, so I put my watch even earlier and put it at 5:30, and I went to run at 5:30 in the morning, because I know that exercise is that important. So you have to prioritize. You need to put it in your schedule. Don't just say, well, maybe I'll do some exercise. You're not going to do it. So you need to put it there. What time are you going to do it? That's the way that you're going to accomplish it. Look at this one. Exercise keeps dementia at bay. Running and walking significantly boost your brain power. And we know this very well. See, how strong your legs are, how fit you are, it's a factor to decrease the risk of dementia. Now, how are you going to get strong legs? By sitting down the whole day there watching television? No, isn't it? You need to be challenging those legs so you can start building that muscle. You need to challenge your brain through, riddles, mathematics, but a way that we use in our patient population by reading Proverbs. Proverbs, when you read a proverb, it doesn't mean directly what it says. You have to think, what's the meaning of that proverb? Well, in any Bible, there's a book called what? Proverbs. And there's a collection there, nice, of Proverbs. Go ahead and pick a copy and read it every day. Also, check out your homocysteine. This is a blood test you need to do. People that are deficient on vitamin B12, homocysteine goes up, and that causes atherosclerosis. That's why I've been telling you, if you're going to switch to that whole food plant-based diet, you have to take some vitamin B12. And your vitamin B12, make sure, this is a blood test that is nice and high, more than 500. This is the marker for inflammation, CRP, ultrasensitive CRP. I want that number to be less than 1. Again, that's a blood test you do. Your fasting insulin, or more commonly used, the hemoglobin A1C, needs to be less than 5.5 because high levels of glucose are very toxic to your brain. That's why you need to keep that diabetes under control ASAP. You need to have your hormones under balance. In the males, we worry about that testosterone. In the females, we worry about the female hormones, progesterone, and so forth. Also, your thyroid needs to be under control. And we know that low thyroid increases your risk of dementia by 81%. That's why I'm telling you, I've seen some people that have problems with their thyroid and they don't want to take the medication. I don't like medication and so forth, but this is one you have to take. There's no other way around it because you increase tremendously your risk for dementia. Make sure you belong to a social community. like a community of faith that meets on a regular basis. There's a huge problem in Australia. We were talking about this also a few days ago. Many people that are disconnected and lonely. You have to belong to something that is meeting on a regular basis. And make sure that your stress is under control. So things like, prayer, forgiveness, and so forth, having hate in your heart is not good for your health. You have to find forgiveness. You need to make sure you're eating enough fiber so you can have stimulation of the right type of microbiota on your system. You need to make sure your vitamin D is nice and high. Your goal should be between 50 to 70. Ask your doctor to measure this. That's how you're going to know what's your level of vitamin D. You need to avoid caffeine in any of its forms. Let me show you why. You can go to my YouTube page and find this video there. So it's this reporter, ABC News, which is a mainline television station in America. This lady takes a functional MRI, which shows the amount of blood flow to the brain, and then she drinks just 1 cup of coffee. And then she repeats the same study. These are the results. This is before the caffeine. Notice the nice blood flow all over the brain. This is what happens after just 1 cup of coffee. Decrease of 40% of blood flow to the brain. You think that's good for your brain? No, I told you, your brain is tremendously hungry for oxygen and nutrition. So by decreasing that blood flow, you are literally starving your brain cells. This is not good for you. Make sure you're eating plenty of antioxidants, not as of pills, but in fruits and vegetables and healthy spices. Make sure you avoid any form of alcohol. Notice the study. Even moderate drinking is linked to changes in brain structure. And trust me, those changes were not positive. It was actually shrinking your brain by drinking alcohol on a regular basis. I've done studies on the subject showing how alcohol increases your risk for mental health problems. Look at this one. This is a fascinating study from France, where they drink quite a bit. Notice what they found. The largest study of its kind finds that alcohol use is the biggest risk factor for dementia. So I'm telling you, this stuff is not good for you. You create inflammation. Every time you drink, you lose some brain cells, okay? So don't do that. Don't tap into your bank and destroy them. Make sure you're eating enough copper and zinc. Where do you get this? Especially nuts and legumes. So make sure you're eating plenty of nuts and legumes. Make sure you don't have sleep apnea. As I mentioned to you, sleep apnea creates tremendous inflammation at night. Notice this study here. People with sleep apnea that is not treated, they have very high risk for cognitive impairment, high risk for dementia. Make sure you are not exposing yourself to multiple heavy metals. The most worrisome one happens to be mercury. I actually done studies on the subject. In my study, we found, I cite another study that said that today every fish has mercury. There is not such thing as mercury-free fish. The problem with mercury is that your body doesn't have a way to get rid of it. So the more you eat, the more it accumulates. And the sad part is that the mercury likes to go to your nervous system. So that is the challenge of the world that we live in today. all the junk and stuff we throw on the ocean, sadly, we are polluting our rivers and oceans. You may say, well, here in Australia, we're clean people. Well, yeah, you are. But what about Asia? What about Latin America? What about Africa? Throwing tremendous amount of junk, and everything is connected, unfortunately. So as you can see, the goal is to address as many of those points as possible. And ASAP deal with that inflammation, oxidation, especially through the elimination of the animal products and so forth, insulin resistance, and the lipids. One last case before we go into break. This is a lawyer. This is a published paper. Lawyer that started having problems with their memory. His mother had dementia. He himself had the Alzheimer's gene, the APOE4. He tried to use the medications for dementia. It doesn't work. It didn't make any difference. So what did he do? Started following every single one of those factors that we just mentioned. And then 6 months later, after following that healthy lifestyle, when they check his brain, everything completely normal. Now, he went on a very long business trip, and he started getting off his lifestyle. He was not doing his exercise, started using caffeine and alcohol again, started eating animal products, not sleeping enough, and all these things. And suddenly started feeling again that the memory problems were creeping in. He got scared, and he went back to his right lifestyle. And by the time they publish the paper, he doesn't have any problems, actually. So as you can see, we can do a lot to prevent this dementia. Start making those changes ASAP, because we don't want to be another one of those statistics. So we'll take a short 10-minute break, and we'll continue.
We will have a 10 minutes break, some nibbling in the back, but before we go over there, I just want, please bow with me, I want to say grace. Our Father in heaven, gracious and merciful God, thank you, Lord, for the food you provide. Please bless it, bless the hand prepared, bless all of us going to share it together. So we will be strong to work in your services. We love you, Lord. We ask in Jesus' holy name. Amen.